The water's fine, homie, jump into the deep end. Sow it, you will reap it. We talking how to start it, how to grow it, how to keep it. Take a deep breath. You are now rocking.
Welcome to Founder Secrets.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
This is going to be fun. We've known each other a long time through the startup scene in Louisville. I've got to see you from the sidelines start a very interesting business in the pet space, created it from nothing, built it up, sold it for a bunch of money, and now you get to tell, some of the story behind it, like what led to it, all the fun stories. But before we jump into that, let's start with our icebreaker. Share the funniest or most interesting customer story you've experienced. Flavio, do you have a story?
Yeah. Well, we started iMedicare as an iPad app back when the iPad first launched, and I just had one iPad that I was doing all the development on, and I really was trying to get this customer that I thought was a great fit, and he kept kind of teasing me along, and I kept going to his office like, oh, hey, we got to do this. And he was like, I don't know, it's thinking about it. And I was like so sure that this guy was going to be a customer. And I thought it was a good technique to just leave him my iPad. It's like, look, the app's already installed. Here's the iPad. It's yours. Just please become a customer. And he did not sign up as a customer. He never gave me back my iPad, and I had to get a new iPad to keep developing the software because we had to take a month-long pause because I gave away the iPad to this guy. I love it. That's my story. Then, by the way, years later, he would tell people about he would be speaking oh, I was one of the early adopters of this company. When we were successful, I was always supporting the company. I did. You still owe me an iPad. I still didn't get my iPad back.
Maybe send him an invoice or something.
Yeah. Yeah, with interest. So mine just came to mind. I just remembered this story. So I started my first company when I was 19. So we were a sports collectibles business, had it for 12 months. So we sold sports collectibles online. And this is in 2005 into 2006. And, people would call and place orders over the phone. That was pretty common. So we had a 1-800 number through Vonage, if anybody remembers Vonage. And so I always answered the phone. So people would call and they'd want, we mostly sold on eBay, but we were trying to sell. We were very early in direct to consumer, 20 years early, I guess. So that's why we wanted people to call. So we'd skip all the eBay fees. But it also meant that you dealt with people who, most of them are great, but these are sports fans, like Giants fans or Jets fans or Seahawks fans or any of them. And most of them are great, but some of them were awful. And one guy called, and this is at probably 9:00 at night. And he calls and he says, hi, I need a Colts mini helmet. We sold these mini helmets. They still sell them. Rydell sells these mini football helmets. I'd like a Colts mini helmet. And then, and he said, and it should be $18. We sold them for $25. And I said, no, they're 25. I mean, look, man, I'll give it to you for 23. But he could tell I was a kid. I was only 19. And so he goes, look, buddy, I just talked to your boss and he said that I got it for $18. And he just had the most arrogant, awful thing about him. And so I said, okay, hold please. And I had two co-founders and we all worked in a 300 square foot garage. And I said, hey, do one of you guys talk to this guy? And they're like, no, obviously they didn't like to answer the phone. So then I get back on the phone and I go, oh, sir, I did just talk to my boss. It is $18 with $15 shipping. So I just added more to the shipping and then charged him more actually for the helmet. And he was so happy because he felt like he got a good deal and he got one over on me. And for some reason, I don't know why, but I just never forgot that. Just 2-minute interaction, probably 3-minute interaction, but he just had such disrespect and thought that he was a big man, beating up on this 19-year-old kid. So that's my awful customer story. Jen, do you have a story for us?
Oh, I have so many. So just for the listeners, they should probably understand what our product was. So people would email us or do it online, send in pictures of their pets. And our flagship product was a stuffed animal that we would make that would look exactly like your pet, which, is subject to opinion. So we had a good, matrix of we loved it and the customer loved it. That's where most people lived, and then there were ones where the customer loved it and we actually didn't think it was that great. So, but we're like, okay. And then, of course, the worst box was, we thought it was really good, but the customer unfortunately did not. Now, we always offered refunds and that, but we also sold random things like figurines of your pets, pajamas with your pet on it. But I do remember one customer who left us a voicemail, and he hated his figurine. And I mean, these were just 3D printed figure. I mean, they weren't, heartbreaking like maybe a plush would be. But I remember him leaving us a voicemail, and he was just so pissed about his product, and he was bashing everyone. And then toward the end, he was like, I hope you all die in a fiery bus crash. Oh, yeah. And I was like, okay. I'm like, is that a threat? No, it is not, because he didn't say, I will make you die in a fiery bus crash. So, but, the funny thing about customers is we decided to call him because, if you could talk to somebody, they're always so different. It's called like the email tiger or whatever, when they're just swearing at you on email, but you get them on the phone and you talk to them and they're as sweet as can be. And so, I did not mention the comment that he made, but I said, you know what, we can take the return of your figurine. He's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And like, just totally night and day in terms of like, what kind of customer. But I would get real nasty, if I thought we were in the right. I'm like, don't let Jen talk to customers sometimes, because she will not be that nice. But yes, very lovely stories as well that we have. I will just share one interesting one that was so nice. A lot of times people would buy Cuddle Clones because their pets would unfortunately pass away, go to the Rainbow Bridge. And so we would help people grieve a lot. But there was one particular lady who wrote to us, and she had said she had 2 Chihuahuas and they always slept in the same bed together. And one of them passed away. And the other one that was still around refused to go in the pet bed anymore. And, it missed its friend. And so what she ended up doing was getting a Cuddle Clone of the one that was gone and putting it like we had it laying down in like a little circular position, and she put that Cuddle Clone in the bed, and sure enough, her other dogs got right in it and wouldn't leave it. And it was just so neat that we could not only help people grieve, but like a dog. We helped a dog. So anyway, very cool stories. And there's all kinds of those, that we helped along the way. So it was a really fulfilling business to have.
Wow, that's amazing. So the business is Cuddle Clones, still around, right? Like it still has the website.
Yep, alive and well.
And so you started in 2011, but you were an actuary before, and that's the kind of interesting. We don't hear a whole lot of that on here. Yeah, just kind of walk through like the early years. How'd you come up with the idea? I think in business school, right?
So I probably was at heart an entrepreneur, but just became an actuary. I don't know. It's probably like I love math. So I was a math major, and that's a natural profession for people who are obsessed with math. But I think I always had the creative side as well. So left hand, right hand type thing. I don't know. But I had the idea to make a stuffed animal of my Great Dane, Rufus, who was white with black patches. He had 2 different color eyes. And I just remember one day, and I was still an actuary, never even thought about being an entrepreneur. Never even heard the word, like, because when we went through high school and college, like didn't have classes for that. Like right now they probably have entrepreneurship in like middle school. I would imagine, but wasn't thinking about changing careers. I was just like, oh, it'd be really cool to have a stuffed animal of you, Rufus, and he was alive. He was fine. So I just kind of forgot about that. But I was a domain collector. So I thought of the name like way before I even tried to start the business. I was like, oh, this is a cute name. I'm going to buy the domain. Then fast forward to, I had decided to get my MBA because I had a small business doing actuarial consulting work with another guy. And then we folded that up, but wanted to go get my MBA after that because I kind of liked having my own business, or being, in charge. So found out about the entrepreneurship MBA at U of L, University of Louisville. And part of the first class, and I think we're getting into that as another question, was just coming up, with business ideas. It was called opportunity discovery. And so once you have the bug of thinking of ideas, you all know, like you can't really turn it off. And so every day now you go around and you're like, oh, that should be a business, or, oh, I bet I could help them. But before you kind of have that training or before you've done it for the first time, you don't really think about it. But so we were forced to kind of write down all of the ideas that we had in the semester. But that had always been one in the back of my mind. And then when we had to present our top 2, Cuddle Clones was my number 1 that I had presented to the MBA class. Wow. And I was still an actuary. Yeah, I didn't quit my actuary job until 2013, I think. So, it helped pay the initial bills and things that we were doing on Cuddle Clones.
And I assume back then it would have been much harder. How do you actually make it work? Like, this isn't you just build some website and it happens. Like, you have to build a product that a customer likes and wants and buys.
It is true. Yeah. Between 2011, which is when we graduated, and 2013, we had a little bit of money from some business plan competitions. I think we had like $50K, which was a lot to us. We're like, wow, so much money. So there were 4 people on our school class, and then only 2 of us kind of stayed around. So this is me and then Adam Green, who was our co-founder, and he was the marketing guy. I was more operations and finance, which it was a very great fit. But we both looked at each other kind of after the program. We're like, do you know how to make a stuffed animal? No. Do you? Nope. No clue. So we ended up blowing the $50K on basically consultants and trying to figure out how to make the product. So we didn't even start building a website. We're like, okay, let's figure out if we can even make one of these. Not only make one, but to our liking. Like, we had this vision in our head of like what a good Cuddle Clone would look like, like accurate, but also has a little bit of a soul, cute, And the early ones were just awful. I still have Cuddle Clone 1 and 2. I mean, one looked like a Beanie Baby, and it cost us $300 to make, like some lady in New Jersey. And then we were finally told by some folks, like, well, plush really isn't in the United States anymore. It left in the 80s in terms of people who were like good at that. So we ended up over in Asia and, had some prototypes. They were, again, kind of bad. Like, they weren't really getting at the essence of the pet. And so we finally found a manufacturer there that made a couple that we said, okay, we might be onto something. But they were huge and they didn't understand quantity of one. I mean, the big factories over there have minimum order quantities of 500 units, 1,000 units, whatever, you name it. And so the people on their staff that could actually look at 2D pictures and create a 3D model or, plush, like prototype or sample, what they call them over there, were very limited as far as their staff. Like, they only have a couple of those people on their staff, and then the rest are just line workers, that repeat. And so they said they would not be our business partner. And that's why we were kind of forced to, well, we weren't forced to, but it was my decision that like, well, maybe we can just start our own workshop. So Adam, will tell people, he's like, I would probably quit at that point. Was like, yeah, this isn't really working out. And I was like, but we have these 2 prototypes and they're good and they were made by people. Like, we need those people. And so what we did was one of our consultants did have a guy on the ground, Jimmy, who worked for us all 13 years. He was really good at sourcing. So if people wanted to make a product in China, like, he would go find a factory for you. But what he found was some space in like a corner of a factory that we could have. And then he found some sample makers, just people like off the street. I don't know where he found them. But I went to China, and that first week it was me and 5 people in a room. Only Jimmy could speak English. And so we had 2 sample makers. We had a materials guy and a sewing lady. And I was kind of giving a PowerPoint presentation of like, this is what we want to do. Like, the concept is not hard to get, right? But it is hard to execute. And so we had those few patterns from that one company. So they were our pattern. They made these samples for us. So they were our patterns. We shared those patterns. And then we just started to make our friends' pets and just start practicing. And so we had our very first 5 employees. And then what we ended up doing was starting what's called a woofie, pun intended, I guess, a wholly foreign owned enterprise in China. And so it is a legal entity owned 100% by a non-Chinese entity. And they do allow you to do that. Like, a lot of people have asked me over the years, don't you have to have a Chinese person on the cap table or, part owner, like a joint venture thing? I'm like, that can exist, but it doesn't have to be. That's in the definition of a woofie, is wholly foreign owned. And so I don't know how we found out about that entity type, but we're like, okay, that sounds cool. So we went through Frost Brown Todd, I believe, which is, a law office here in Louisville, but they had, a Chinese partner. And, it wasn't awful to set up. So you have to go through just some legal things, and then you have to put up what's called registered capital. And basically what it means in layman's terms is money that you send into the country and you will never get back. Well, because it's for the starting of the business and you just can't withdraw it. So it's registered capital over there. But for us, it was not intense in terms of the amount because we didn't have a lot of assets. So a lot of these entities have machines they have to build or buy or do whatever. Like for us, it was just a couple sewing machines and like some salary projections that basically became what's called our registered capital. And so I think you had like 2 or 3 years to, instill that capital over there, which was fine because we spent more than what was required of us in those first couple of years. So that's how you go from nothing, not knowing how to make a stuffed animal, to getting some other folks to make them, get a couple you like, and then saying, okay, well, we need those particular people on our team. And so we just started it ourselves.
So you just hired those 5 people in China.
At first we were kind of paying them through Jimmy's bank account. Like, because we had to wait, it was like 4 to 6 months to actually get the entity like official. So yes, I was probably operating illegally in China for like 3 months. Hopefully they're not listening. No.
So that still exists today, the Woofy?
Yeah. It was called Hoi Chung Lee Toy Company, and loosely translated to Together Pet Happiness.
Oh.
Yeah. So it was a very integral part of the business. I mean, we paid all their salaries directly through the entity. It was never a third party. So like the employees wouldn't go make someone else's product. I mean, it was our workshop, literally our workshop, which is very different from how most people do it. People have asked me, oh, well, all about China operations and logistics. I'm like, actually, I don't, because one, we just had our own workshop. Like, I didn't care about third parties. I mean, we had a third party that did some products like the pajamas, but also, about shipping. So many people use the slow boat. And for us, we were air freight every day out of China, DHL. And I mean, huge boxes of stuffed animals, that we would then repackage in the US.
Is a stuffed animal?
So they retailed at $249 typically. I don't know what they're at now, but they have sales on things, Cyber Monday, Labor Day. I think they just had a sale. I'm still on the email list. We started out actually at $199 and we launched in May of 2013, I believe. So it took us the 2 years from the MBA class to launching to get the product right and build the website. So it was a while. And so, but then they started at $199, and then in 2015, we hit a Gizmodo.com article and it went through the roof. Our site crashed. We went from maybe 15 orders a week to 150 a day. Like, it was wild. Like, we couldn't handle it. I mean, we weren't really ready, but it was good practice and it was good for us because people pay up front. So we had all this money. We're like, oh shit, now we got to fulfill this. But it allowed us to go hire like a head of operations in China, like a real person that knew how to run a place. And then that was in February of 2015. So we were able to fix our shit by Christmas of that year, because Christmas was always a very, very busy time for us. And we figured it out. But yes, what was the original question? Because I feel like
No, this is great. I'm wondering, because you eventually sold, and I'm wondering, what year did you sell in?
Yeah. Okay. So the price was $199 until we went viral. And then someone was like, well, just raise your price. Maybe it will stop the madness. So we did to $249. And then there were still more orders and we never went that down. So anyway, yeah, $249 was like retail. And then ArcFog was probably about 30% or so. And that included the shipping, which was probably half that. Materials, labor, were the other half. But yeah, so we ended up selling in 2021. So about 8 years after we went, turned on the lights or whatever and went live.
Why did you sell? Also, you perfectly timed the sell. That's like the best time to sell, 2021.
Adam and I go back and we talk about this because CPMs were increasing for e-commerce. It got so much more competitive, just online advertising. So we had very different visions on where to go with the company. Mine was all over the place, but bigger. It was like, oh, let's become, this massive pet company. We had this digital piece called Cartoonize My Pet that I wanted to take and, make pet profiles and do other things with it. And Adam's like, you're going to cannibalize our core business. We should stick with that and focus. And I'm like, wow, I can't. So what we decided to do, we had 4 of us kind of on the management team. And so Adam and I both presented our strategy. And I said, hey, we will not do mine unless it's 3-1 on the vote, because it was a very aggressive vision. We would have had to raise some more money and do a bunch of things. But I said, if it's a tie, that means we really don't have buy-in. And he said, fine, if it's 3-1, I'll jump on board. I'll be the 4th, right? Well, I lost. So it was 2-2. And I said, okay, well, I think what we should try to do. Oh, and we had decided before that meeting was, hey, we're going to try to sell it right now. We've got a really good trajectory. We might want to do some other things. If we can't sell or decide not to, then we're going to pick between these 2 strategies. And so we ended up, going out. We got a business broker. We didn't try to do it on our own. He was out of Cincinnati. We actually looked at maybe 4 or 5 different ones. But eventually it wasn't the business broker that introduced us to the buyer, the eventual buyer. But yeah, 2021, I do feel like it was good. COVID was actually quite good for Cuddle Clones. You never knew. It was like hit or miss on businesses. We ended up seeing that somebody was selling some kind of mask like March 2nd or something. And by March 9th, we had custom masks with your pet on it. And I don't think we could have done that without our own workshop.
Wow.
We're like, hey, here's the design. How, can we make these? And so we had a generic cat one that said, close your meowth. And then a generic dog one that said, it's rough out here, RUFF. And they were just adorable. And then we had the ones that were custom with your pet on it. And I think we sold $3 million of masks that year in 2020.
What?
Yeah. So it's the ability to recognize, oh shit, people want these. They're searching now. Everyone's searching for masks. And, we got in on the Facebook ads because they started canceling ad campaigns that had the word mask because they didn't want companies to capitalize on a pandemic. It's like, you know what, dude? People want masks.
It's
and
rough out here.
That's right. They need these masks, even though, they were N95 or whatever.
They didn't actually develop it.
They didn't work, but
They were very cute.
They were so cute and they were so comfortable. I agreed with this. I had people say these are the most comfortable masks. I'm like, I agree. I don't know how we did that, but it worked. So somehow our ads kept running, even though Facebook said they were going to cancel. And so we're just like, hey, whatever, don't tell Facebook. A lot of things worked out in our favor. But I do agree with you, Taylor, that 21 was a good time to sell an e-commerce business because I just think the CPMs and the environment has just become so much more competitive. And the take rates of these large companies, Facebook, Google, all of it is just insane.
Yeah.
Which, gets me into my next story of why I'm in crypto now, why I work in blockchain. But,
all right. Before we get to crypto, just, I guess, curious, talking about a sale, let me guess. Were you doing 10 to 15 million in revenue?
Yeah. So we were, our trajectory was, so in 15, when we went viral, I think we ended up at 1.5 million from 100K. Wow. And then it kind of doubled from there. So then 3 to 6 to 12 each year. And then by 2021, I think it was going to be around 15 million.
That was a great business.
It was so neat. I was like, it's so fun. We had not necessarily concentrated on profitable. I think we were slightly profitable, but, kind of putting all the stuff back in and we could do all the things mostly that we wanted to do. But yes, so when we went to sell, I feel like we had a good trajectory in revenue. Profit, was more a story of we can be, we want. And so I feel like in our minds anyway, in the SIM, it's sort of the marketing brochure, it was more about the growth, the side, the opportunity for growth, and getting into more pet things. So yeah, we had some companies. There was a pretty famous one where you can, maybe go to a store and build your own bear. That was in the mix. we couldn't quite figure out how that would mix because you can't go in a store and make a stuffed animal of your pet. Like, it's just not going to work, and those really aren't that custom. Like, they have all what they call the skins, but they're not custom. There's just like 50 different ones, but everybody sort of associates it with being custom. But anyway, we didn't really quite know how they would fit into their strategy about pets, but they were in the mix. There was a company out in California that owned the site gifts.com. So they were really heavy into custom gifts and things, which I think that would have been a really good fit. But their two offers or letters of intent just weren't as great as we wanted. And then we actually did have a company, where the founder was in Boston, but had originally roots to Louisville through, kind of word of mouth that we were looking to sell, came into the picture, and they had a pretty decent offer. Their plan was to buy e-commerce companies and use a bunch of AI tools to really improve the bottom line. So, efficiency, branding tools and whatnot. And I mean, this was sort of when AI was starting to get a lot of investment, where, if you have the words AI, you'll just get a check, no matter what. So I feel like it was kind of on the tail end of that. So we ended up selling to that group, and we all went to work over there. I wouldn't say the strategy worked out quite the way they had pictured it. They bought one more e-commerce business before they ended up going under, actually. And we worked for them for about a year before, we were kind of all laid off at the end of 22. And what's interesting and something, for the entrepreneurs out there who are looking to sell their business, just make sure that in the deal, yes, the numbers are good and you have to have, all kinds of language in the legal document. But for us, the problem came so there were going to be two payments, one upfront at close and then one a year later. And what we ended up doing was making that second payment what's called an unsecured promissory note. And the word unsecured is bad for entrepreneurs because what that means is that if the company that bought you has any senior debt, like a bank loan, mortgage, they didn't have a mortgage, but, official secured bank loans, those creditors come first before anything else. So us having an unsecured note basically get put in the group of just regular old vendors or, so just creditors that are just second tier to the secured lenders. And so what ended up happening was they sold Cuddle Clones again. And so that's why it does still exist in the world. It's owned by kind of an e-commerce grouping of businesses out of Ohio. And so I think they have maybe 10 or 12 brands that they maintain, which is very nice. But unfortunately, we did not get our second payment on the deal because the money from that sale went to pay off the senior bank debts and there was nothing left. So very good lesson to learn. And that's why I had to go get another job because, a lot of times when you have these exits, your preferred shareholders get all their money first at closing before the common stockholders get money. And so, so mine was sort of backloaded on that second tranche. It wasn't bad. I actually, I had enough and I made a lot of investments. I became an angel investor. I was like, I don't want to pay a tax. I'm just going to roll over these gains and all kinds of new C Corps. Maybe not the best use of the money, given that I did not get the second tranche, but that's okay.
Yeah. I think that's such an important lesson that people don't talk about, right? Because you see a number, the same, the sale of my company, I think we ended up with less than half than what is publicly listed out there.
Mm-hmm.
And in our case, private equity and escrows and equity and all kinds of different ways to not pay founders, basically, at the time of the sale.
Yeah, which is awful.
Because, look, if you're a buyer, obviously also from their side, we want to take the least amount of risk on this thing and only pay later if things work out. Which, if things work out, it is fine. But to your point, if things don't work out, then it really hurts the entrepreneur. So, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that because it's definitely a story people don't talk about as much.
Yeah. Well, and, ours didn't even have an earn out. We didn't have to earn it. It was just there. Whereas a lot of exits, you'll find they're going to put you to the test. you're saying that, this business has this opportunity to grow. Well, prove it. Then you'll get your second payout. So, a lot of them are tied to earnouts in the first or second year after close.
It's very hard. So when you're talking with someone who wants to start a consumer business today, like let's say they want to start the Cuddle Clone 2.0, not exactly, but
should I do it?
Yeah, maybe you should. Because so much has changed. You talked a little bit about this. The rates are higher. The cost for customer acquisition has skyrocketed. Now there's like tariffs and all these other things. People are worried or scared about starting a business like this. Does that make you think, ooh, now's the opportunity? Because people, there's kind of blood in the water. Or do you think this would be a good time to kind of sit this one out, wait till things settle down, and maybe start a business later?
I guess I have two thoughts. I mean, if you can make it during this time, then that's probably a good test, because that means when things get easier, you'll be on like easy street, maybe. Two, it's like, yeah, you might be, I don't know. I don't think the word fear and startup should go together. Like, if you're afraid of stuff like this, maybe you shouldn't be starting a business. Like, you have to get it done. I mean, like, waiting is just going to, I don't know. I mean, I have heard that like Andreessen Horowitz has like all these blockchain companies on hold until like legislation comes out. And like, we did get a stablecoin bill, a month ago or whatever, but they're kind of waiting for more US legislation around crypto to like start these businesses. So that's a strategy. I don't know if that's fear. It's more of a strategy, but I don't know. My advice would be like, there's always going to be some excuse not to start. Like, just go. Figure it out. Like for us, and see, it's weird, this China thing, because when we owned our own workshop, we could put whatever dang value we wanted on the custom sheet. So, look at that. So we had done this for years, even before tariffs, and even the first set of tariffs, like back in Trump 1 administration, there was that whole list. Plush wasn't even on it. So we were kind of lucky in that sense. But had we been, we always marked the value as like $5 a plush. Because, I mean, if somebody opens up that box and just looks at a bunch of stuffed animals, like, they're not going to know. They're like, oh, it's stuffed animals, $5. I mean, yeah, that makes sense. It's coming from China. Everything's $5, right? And so, the retail value really came in the emotional aspect of the material good. And so we always declared it as $5, like no matter what. But I bet you that's helping them now, for the tariffs, because yeah, maybe it's 100% on 5 or, whatever, 25%. I don't know what plush is, but that's very doable if they continue that practice versus, if you had tried to put the retail price on there, that's going to put them out of business. So anyway, yeah, I just feel that yes, it's hard. So e-commerce, I do think e-commerce is hard. I think it'd be hard to start a business in which you really have to differentiate yourself. Like, let's say I wanted to start a new pet leash or something. Like, that would be so hard. So, I mean, the more unique you can make, like, our idea was so unique too, that like we didn't have a lot of competition. I do think some of the things we did wrong though was the storytelling. I don't think we got the story out as much as we should have. It's such a compelling story, like people either really think the idea is creepy, which is fine, that's a story, or they were like, oh my God, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like, I want one so bad. But, the more ways you can get creative and like back to guerrilla marketing tactics, I think would be something I would be trying to do if I were trying to start an e-commerce business today.
But now you're in crypto, which is quite a pivot, e-com to crypto.
Oh, maybe not so bad from like Actuary to plush.
There you go.
That's
a good point.
You're coming full circle.
It's always back to the math on the numbers. Crypto and blockchain, very different topics. People are still like, oh, crypto, it's a scam, it's magic money, all the volatile tokens out there, the meme coins, there's all that. And then there's blockchain, the technology, which is quite different. And a lot of the books I read and podcasts I'm into is, blockchain is sort of like a supercomputer, where you can kind of bypass all these big companies, right? Like your Googles of the world and Facebooks. And if you can get in and kind of create these blockchain communities where they have governance and you don't have to involve all those folks, then, that might be a good thing. So I do have some ideas cooking in terms of pets and that, but my day job is actually doing accounting for crypto. I have about 13 crypto AI startups that we run the finance function for.
13.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Oh, wow.
We just had one launch their token last month. So they are live on mainnet. They're a Polkadot and Ethereum based token. So they've got kind of two sources. And they're doing, a lot of the companies still are building like infrastructure. So I think their story is like they create app chains, which basically allows you to kind of cross-chain bridging and a whole bunch of stuff, but in a lot shorter amount of time so that your team can kind of focus on what's on this app chain versus trying to build the app chain themselves. So that's one that launched.
Any Cuddle tokens?
No, I do own the domain petspace.com, and I feel like that would be a good one to use for my blockchain pet idea. So we will see. Petspace.com. Soon, not coming anytime soon. Maybe, I don't know, in a year or two. But yeah, I'm really just learning the industry more. I've been in it now since like February of 23, and it's quite interesting. I made this Venn diagram the other day of me potentially showed to investors. And so I'm in the middle of, e-commerce, pets, blockchain, finance. Like there's probably not a lot of people with that mix of knowledge. And so I kind of, I'm not a crypto native where those guys just heads down, they're building a bunch of shit that no one wants. Like there's not this good retail use case yet for crypto that everybody's talking about. Like needs to be there. It's still all crypto bros building shit for each other. And it's like, can we please like build something that's actually useful for the everyday person? And so that's kind of where my ecom pet brain is coming into crypto from, an outsider and being like, well, maybe we can build something here. I don't know. So we will see.
Like what? Are you at liberty to share any ideas as crazy as they might be?
The closest thing that I've come to, it's kind of like this hybrid for-profit with a non-profit arm, but think of it as like AARP for pet owners. So it's like this community. I know it's a terrible analogy, but in terms of the structure, so it's membership based, but it's like all kinds of fun, useful features for pet owners that people wouldn't necessarily buy as a product. So if you have a pet profile with us, which is your central sort of core, there's a quick "My pet is missing" button, which creates a poster. It sends it out to local shelters. It sends it out on your behalf to all your socials of like, oh my God, Izzy's missing. Help me find her. Because I don't know if you look on Nextdoor or Facebook, people and their pets go missing every freaking day. And there's no structure to it. And they have to create the pet poster. It's like, we don't have time for that. She's missing. We need them right away. So, little features like that. There's a pet insurance arm that I'm looking into to kind of basically offer it at cost. Like, I don't care about the profit on that. I just want it to be affordable for pet owners. I want to create a bill. This is one. So we need a bunch of people to sign a petition to get veterinary care and prescription pet medicine onto your HSA and FSA list.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's fabulous. It's easy to understand. It's a quick amendment.
That's a good one.
It's a few more bullets to the allowed list on the tax code. And 70% of homes own a pet. So I have a domain called the Bipartisan Movement, bipartisan.org. And it's literally going to bring the country together of like, let's bring the country together with our pets and get this passed. Like I don't really feel like it's a huge monetary loss for the country in terms of tax revenue because you're already capped. Like let's say on your FSA, you're capped at like $2,500 a year or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Like I've already spent that, but it would have been nice to maybe throw my dog's prescription on there, right? They're not losing any more money in terms of, net new, but people who are already on an FSA could just include it. Or maybe if, they didn't want to be on an FSA, maybe they would want to join one now because pet stuff was included on there. But, they're members of our family. That's more and more clear, with new laws and things and whatnot. But so that's something, but like, that's not a product, that's not something I can just like spin up as like, oh, buy this or contribute. Like, no. So it's all sort of in this pet community idea.
Well, why does it have to be on crypto?
Now,
It sounds like you could start that one today.
It's a very valid point. And I don't know if the answer is yes yet. Like, I don't want to try to force it on there if it's not going to work. But blockchain would be good in the case of a decentralized ownership of the community. A lot of times the playbook is a private company kind of builds the network. They have investors on that side. And then once they launch, it takes 3 or 4 years to sort of decentralize the whole thing so that literally it's run by the community. So the reason you create a token is not for meme purposes with no utility. The actual utility behind a token, and you should read the A16Z guy's book. It's called Read, Write, Own. Chris Dixon, he's like their blockchain investor guy. The idea is like the token, you create these to incentivize the network and the community. And so you have a portion for developers. You have a portion to, market the community and get people engaged. And so that's kind of your money, if you will, to incentivize people to build on the chain. And then there's a whole governance layer. So you have all these initiatives that the people vote on, like, hey, what should the next feature be? And so the idea of the blockchain is that you can decentralize it and make it more community owned as opposed to privately owned. I don't know if that's the right answer. I don't know. But I know a lot of crypto investors that have money. So maybe not. I think we could probably get it running just fine on a Web 2.0 website and do things for people.
I love your...
So it's up in the air.
I love your interest in the domains. All right, let's move to hacks. So the hacks they could be a blockchain hack, right? Could be something that somebody could use, could be a service you use, could be a product or what have you. I'll start and then Flavia, and then we'll wrap with you, Jen. So mine it's a little bougie, I know, but my wife's like, you can't tell this on the pod. But I'm going to. So we started doing massages every month, and there's like Massage Envy, kind of places where they have subscriptions. We go to this small Thai place and half the time I leave there, I'm not sure if I got beat up or was it a massage or like, what is it? Cause we ever got a Thai massage, they like put you in a pretzel and walk on your back. It's very dangerous. But my hack is that it's like the feeling of the massage is great. Like it's great, whatever. But that the actual hack is for founders or entrepreneurs. They get 1 hour where there's no screen. My eyes are closed, but I'm awake, and there's nice, peaceful music, and I do my best thinking. It is the best time for me to think and to think about new ideas or things I should have. Oh crap, I forgot to do that. And so we schedule it, so it's not like, oh hey, should we do it on Tuesday? Yes. What's important is to schedule the next one while you're there. So that's what we do. So while we're in there, and it's actually like if you go to a local place, it's quite reasonable. It's not all that expensive, and it's like a nice little treat. It's like a nice thing to look forward to on the we do it in the afternoons, like early afternoon, and so I'd highly recommend it. Either like we do couples massages, you can do solo massage, what have you. But I'd highly recommend it. We're like 4 months in probably, and now I'm going to do it twice this month. Now I'm like, can you get twice?
Have you ever been in one of those sensory deprivation tanks?
Yeah, I used to do those in New York.
Okay. Yeah.
Have you done
those
it?
are interesting.
Yeah,
once, a long time ago, but it was the day before one of my actuarial exams, and I got like a 10, like perfect square, and I was like, whoa. I guess I was relaxed. But yeah, I mean, I felt like you could still have senses. Like I heard a lot of stuff. Like everything was like louder because you're like in liquid, and I was like, this is so strange. But again, no screen, right? I heard a
baby shriek in one of mine, and there was no baby around, and so I was like, all right, I'm done. That was I had done like 5 of them or 6 of them. Yeah, it's kind of I did a 90-minute one. Don't do that. It's Flavio, what's your hack?
So have you guys heard of FlyKit?
No. What's that?
Google it now.
I just got back from a trip to Europe to see my family, and jet lagged. Jet lag's a thing, right? Going both ways. And FlyKit is really great at helping you through it. So it sends you a kit with everything, the nightshade, the glasses, the supplements you take, melatonin when needed. So, and then in the app, it reminds you on your phone and on your watch, it'll tell you, hey, take this now. This is the time to go to sleep. Wear these glasses now. And it helped a lot. It's really a much nicer way to avoid jet lag.
All right. That's a cool one. FlyKit.
What about you, Jen?
FlyKit with two T's.
Yeah,
well,
2 T's.
it makes me think of this thing with also KITT. It's called Kitty Split.
What's that?
It's a really easy, it's a website right now. I don't even know if they have their app yet, but if you have a dinner with 3 people, you can put it in and it'll split it for you. But more importantly, if you're like on this vacation trip with people and there's like, 2 people attended this event, I paid for 4 people to go to this event. And so you basically put in your expenses and who was there, and then it automatically does all the stuff. So at the end, it says, Jen owes Taylor $38.18. Taylor owes Fabian, $34. And so it's just super cool. But yeah, it's neat. It's
What's
called
the name of
Kitty
it?
Split.
KittySplit?
KittySplit.com.
Because I've used Splitwise before.
I've wanted this to exist forever. Anyway, but like entrepreneur stuff, I'm an inbox zero person. That's my best life hack. Like I think I get more done. I think I'm just organized. I'm a better responsive person to things. I get really stressed out when I see people's phones and they have 10,000 unread texts or emails where it's like, so big that it wraps. I'm like, oh my God,
So
like
big
that
it wraps.
stresses me out. So I know that people can't change. I mean, this is probably to your core. Like you're not going to change from a 10,000 unread to an inbox zero person. But I just feel when everything is clean and organized, like I even organize my sent emails, which is wild. A lot of people don't do that. Yeah, I put all my sent files or emails into folders as well. So everything goes into a folder. And if it's in the inbox, it means I need to deal with it. If it's away in a folder, it's done. Like I don't know. So organization is my life hack. Like I just feel that there's so much to get done. And if you're not organized, it's not going to happen. And you're going to miss things.
That's a good hack for entrepreneurs too. But Jen, we'll have to bring you back on when you launch the new membership.
Thank you for rocking with the homies. Taylor, Trusty, and Flavio. Seize the day, own it. Until next time, hold it down, hold it down. Hey.